Okay, we'll get started. Hello and welcome to the Vote Local interview series sponsored by the Doylestown Democrats. I'm Judy Dixon. I'm a committee person here for the Doylestown Democrats. Asking our local officials, what do you do, is the starting point of our conversation into a deeper dive into local government. A lot of us know what goes on a national level much more than we do in our own backyards. So a group of volunteers from the Doylestown Democrats put together this 7-part interview series. We're so glad that you're here. This is a Zoom meeting, will be recorded and will be available on the Doylestown Democrat website. So yes, this is the second of 7. Last week we met with the Doylestown Borough, and this week, tonight, we are meeting with the township. In 2 more weeks, we'll be meeting with the county commissioners, and then we start the 3rd or 4th Wednesday of every month, meeting with county school board officials, county row offices, and then onto the state level. So a roadmap to this evening. You are here. This is introductions. I will be introducing our guest in a few minutes. Then we're going to go to a recorded session. It's about 30 minutes. And during that time, you can put your questions into Q&A, and we'll be following up with your questions because the officials will be here live taking your questions. Johnny King Marino is also here with me tonight, and he will be helping with questions. And then lastly, we're going to let you know how you can be more engaged on a local level. So for the recorded session, Connor O'Hanlon is the chairperson for the Doylestown Democrats. He is going to be interviewing Jennifer Herring and Dan Woods, Doylestown Township Supervisors. So just a little bit more about the Office of the Township Supervisors. It is with an $18 budget and a staff of 55 to 60 employees. Running a township is no small feat. Since these are elected positions and not full-time jobs, the Office of the Township Manager provides a lot of the day-to-day functions. However, the Doylestown Supervisors, the Township Supervisors, are responsible for legislative purposes. They do enact laws. They do control where the money is spent and where it goes. So they do legislative policies. It is a 5-person supervisory board, and they do also serve as liaisons to 21 different committees that the townships oversees different functions of the government. Township Supervisor Jennifer Herring has been a supervisor since 2017, and a smart woman she is. She is on this. She is a CPA, so joined the Ways and Means Committee, which Ways and means that she's oversees budgets and finance. So having a CPA in that role is very good for us to have. She and her family have lived in Doylestown for over 22 years, and she is a CPA with 22 years experience. Township Supervisor Dan Wood has been on the supervisor board since 2019. He is also a liaison to various committees, notably the Environmental Advisory Council, Water, Sewers, and Roads. Not always the sexiest committees to join, but necessary for a very healthy township. Dan did grow up in Doylestown. He went to Kutz Elementary and on to CB West High School. He is a software engineer. Now we will move on to the recorded session of the interview. So do stay with us, put your questions into Q&A, and we will afterwards be back live with our elected officials.
Hello and welcome to the second interview of the Doylestown Democrats Vote Local interview series. I am Connor O'Hanlon, the chairman of the Doylestown Democrats, and I'm joined today by the 2 Democratic Township Supervisors here in Doylestown Township, Jen Herring and Dan Wood. I want to thank first Koru Real Wellness for hosting us today and helping us record here for this interview series. But for today, we're going to be starting and talking about the Doylestown Township local government. So Jen, I'll go to you first. What are the 3 main functions of a township supervisor?
Well, I think the 3 main functions are we enact ordinances, meaning we make the laws related to our township. And we also enforce those laws. We tend to our community's needs. So when we're talking about parks and roads, so these are the things that we would have to oversee. We also enact the taxes for the township.
What do you think is the most important thing that we would like our viewers to know about being a township supervisor?
Well, we're the ones that impact your local taxes and your local services probably more than any other elected official right now. I mean, you have school board and county, but you're interviewing them later, so you can talk to them about that. But on our end, we're setting the tax rates for you. We're maintaining your roads, we're maintaining your parks.
And I guess this kind of piggybacks into it, but if Jen, if you want to take this, obviously you talk about your staff. What is the makeup of the township government? And really, I guess you could start with, what is the makeup of the supervisor board? How many are there? You know, what's the breakup?
Right. So Doylestown Township, because of its size, we have 5 supervisors. Townships can be 3 or 5, depending on the size of the municipality. We currently have, politically, our Board of Supervisors is made up of 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. We're elected every other year. 2 seats are usually up for election, except for 1 year. One of those years, only 1 seat's up. And so you'll see that we cycle out. So there are people who've been there for a couple of years all the time. As far as the makeup of the township itself, as staffing goes, we have about 55 to 60 employees, depending on the season and whether we have people coming in or out. I'd say a good third of those are our police department. So they do make up a large portion of not only our employees, but the cost of the township. It's about a third of the budget as well. And the rest are people who maintain the parks, the roads. We have staff, we have a zoning officer. So we have a whole bunch of different functions under what we would oversee.
This question go to either of you, but obviously, if you've gone to a local government meeting, you've seen people on the supervisor board that aren't supervisors. Could you tell me a little bit about either the township manager or the township solicitor?
Yeah, so the manager is actually the person that oversees the day-to-day functions of the municipality. So she'll make sure that our finance department is doing what they should do, the roads department, anytime that there is an emergency or something that needs a high-level decision, she'll bring that to the Board of Supervisors to make those calls. But she does the day-to-day calls, and we're the ones that hire the manager and entrust them to do those types of things without having to micromanage the whole system. We have a solicitor on the board. A solicitor is the attorney for the municipality, and he sits in on our meetings often to give us legal advice in real time. We also have an engineer that does a similar type of function where they'll be there to give us advice in real time during the board meetings.
Yeah, we'll also have our director of operations there, who serves a kind of a similar role to our township manager. Him or her will oversee things like our roads programs, our buildings, public works, and that kind of thing. So that they obviously work closely with the township manager. And we mentioned you'll see our chief of police during these meetings as well. Sometimes you'll see a stenographer keeping notes, but in this COVID era, that's been a little different.
Would you guys, this could go to either one of you, but talk about a little bit some of the successful projects that you guys have been working on or that are coming up, something that you guys have made a decision on?
When I was first elected as a supervisor, I had 2 main priorities. One was to make our government more accessible and more transparent. And the other was to make sure that the environment was a consideration in all major choices. And we have we've taken steps in both of those issues. The first being our meetings are now, well, due to COVID partially, available online to participate. So even though that's a good function for this COVID era, it also helps people of different abilities be able to participate, whereas before that they would have to actually get to the building. So I think that's something that's come out of it that's increased our availability to the general public. I also am pleased that we have moved from having meetings during the work day. Oftentimes our Board of Supervisors meetings with major decisions were done during the workday, but we've decided as a board that we're going to move those meetings to after the workday so that we can have more participation from the public. So I'm grateful for those things. And environmental issues, we are moving forward with the Sierra Club. We've backed the Sierra Club's Ready for 100 initiative as a township, which means that we are looking to be 100% electric, renewable by 2035, and other renewable energy by 2050. So we're taking steps right now to help the environment, and we sure have a lot more to go, but I think that we've made some clear steps that's the direction that we want our township to go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the environment's a major issue for everybody nationally and locally, but we do have great impact on it locally. If you have seen Dan around ever, you've seen him on his bike, probably campaigning. But Dan, can you tell me a little bit about like the bike and hike stuff and the paths that have been paved through Doylestown Township?
Yeah, happy to. So, if anyone's not aware, the bike and hike system in Doylestown, this includes Doylestown Borough as well. It's meant to be between both Doylestown's. Started, I want to say 96, 97, something like that. I was in 4th grade at the time. That gives you an idea how long ago that was. And it started outside Coots Elementary because I remember we had a whole big thing about it, thinking like, hey, this is really cool. I can't wait to see the rest of it. 2021, we're still building it. And that's not necessarily an indictment at the speed it's gone. It's gone up and down at various times of how fast we're building, and there's a lot of elements that go into building our bike system. We have a great group in our bike and hike committee steering that for us, and that's a committee not just Doylestown Township, but people from Doylestown Borough, and we coordinate closely with county officials, folks in New Britain and Chalfont who are building parts of their own trails, so we can start connecting with our neighbors and create this, the idea of just creating an alternative route for people to travel between our different municipalities and just get out, exercise, especially in this COVID world. We've seen a huge increase in the use of our trail systems.
What are some of the committees that Doylestown Township has for their local government? And I guess if you guys could each explain what being a liaison means for being a township supervisor for the committees, and either one of you could pick it up first, but maybe give a little breakdown of each individual committee that at least that you can name.
We have quite a lot of committees in the township. We're very lucky to have a talented group of volunteers in so many different aspects of the municipality. But right now I'm the liaison for the pension committee, which is actually a pretty large part of our budget. And if you learn about other municipalities, it's a large percentage of a lot of municipal budgets. The Ways and Means Committee, which is the committee that works on budgeting. So it's not the most exciting committee that most people would want to get involved in, but it is one of the most crucial that you can be involved in. And also the Planning Committee. The Planning Committee, what they do is they take the vision of the township and put it out into where we can build. So they look at the map and say, okay, well, this is an area that we want to keep residential. This is an area that we want commercial. And they really do take the vision of what the supervisors have put out there and try and build our community to reflect that. And they listen to the needs of the community, and they tailor things to the current day. We just updated our planning our vision plan for the township, so that we can direct them further to decide how much we want in agriculture, in industry, in residential. But being a liaison on these committees, is like being the person that goes between the other board of supervisors, the staff of the township, and the committee themselves. So you get to communicate between the three of them. So if Dan's on a committee and I want to learn more about it, if he's the liaison, I'll ask him and he'll fill me in on what's going on in those committees. But we do have, I think we have 17 committees, so there are a lot.
15 or 17, somewhere in that range.
Some of them are fairly dormant committees that we have because of law or because it's just been on the books for a while, but we have about, probably 15 active.
From my end, the committees I'm a part of, and kind of playing what Jen was saying, like we have some of these that are inactive. I'm on our agricultural advisory board, which we have. Unfortunately, it's not very active. But one of the other committees I'm on is our roads and bridges committee, which is not a traditional committee like the rest of ours. It's me and our director of operations and our public works person to discuss what are our plans for our roads going forward and adjusting that. And we just put in enough money in the budget to really get our roads back up to shape and start really catching up with things. The traditional committees I'm on, our environmental advisory committee, which Jen served on previously. Obviously it's dealing with our environment here in Doylestown. They were big in pushing for the Ready for 100 initiative. And they have so many things for us to work on. They're a very ambitious committee, all for aiming to make our environment better. And then the other one I serve as liaison for is our Public Water and Sewer Advisory Board. In addition to those committees, some of the other ones we have that Jen and I aren't personally on, but also help. We have our Bike and Hike Committee. We have our Friends of Kids Castle Committee, our Parks and Rec Board. I know I'm missing a bunch here. We have our DTMA, which is Doylestown Municipal Authority, which if you get your water in Doylestown, they're the ones handling that. We're a partner on their board.
Obviously, like you were talking about, Dan, sewers and some of that stuff is not necessarily the most appealing things to talk about, but you do have to set a budget and you do have to prioritize things. So can you guys tell me a little bit about the Doylestown Township budget, how you prioritize what you need to spend money on and when?
Well, it's actually a pretty complicated process that we go through. We have several budget meetings as supervisors where we make decisions on not only what we want to spend money on, but sometimes we're required to spend money on by the state. So we have to prioritize things as far as what's required, what we really need to do, such as, if there's a stretch of road that is particularly bad, and the types of things that we want to do. Like there are projects that certainly we think would benefit the community that aren't necessary, but we know that it would bring either value to our community in one way or another. So that's how we prioritize it. Now, every want that we have comes at a cost. And so to me, it's incredibly important, especially now with the economy having some issues, is to keep those costs at a minimum. So some of those projects that we want, they're going to get pushed out into the future or may not ever come to fruition. But I think that's the trick, and that's why we have so many meetings and we have so many professionals that work on this project for us each year.
I guess this goes straight from the budget into a little bit of like a personal question, but I think it's a vital question to ask is, how much time do you guys put into this and how much are you paid for the time that you put in?
Ballpark, maybe 5 hours a week on average, but we have our meetings that we're required to go to. We have our 2 supervisor meetings a month and our liaison meetings. But then it's also, that's the bare minimum of what should be expected for a supervisor to do. On top of that, it's what you want to put in outside of that. different supervisors feel different ways about it. I personally I want to, as a liaison, we're supposed to stay back and let the boards kind of handle their business, and we provide insight from the board of supervisors perspective. But there are times when we want to do extra research and hey, you guys are interested in this. Here's what I found out. Can we have a discussion about this kind of thing, and kind of drive where we want to, the EAC, our Environmental Advisory Committee, is a great example. Jen and I have discussed at different times about doing a recycling program for yard signs after elections. So that's something Jen did the bulk of the legwork, and then we talked with EAC about. So it does become how much time do you want to put in? In Doylestown Township, we have an option of, I believe it's about $4,000 a year salary that we can take, or there are healthcare options, and that's up to you to decide what you want to take.
So let's emphasize that you said $4,000 a year, not $4,000 a month, $4,000 a year for the amount of time that you guys are putting into the local government and making the township function. So we're all Democrats here, sitting here, but the Township Supervisor Board is made up of a majority of Republicans right now. So can you shed a little light on what it would mean to have a majority Democratic Township Supervisor Board? And, in the future, hopefully we can achieve that.
So the difference between, it's funny, you hear a lot, what's the difference between a Democrat and a Republican when it comes to paving roads? And while that is true to some degree, there's also a difference in our value system and our kind of point of view. I think that our priorities are slightly different, and it can mean a lot. I had talked earlier about the environment and how that was one of my main focuses. Now, the prior board of supervisors before I got on board may have said, okay, let's do this project, the community wants it, and just not thought to put it in an environmental perspective. So I think the change in perspective is important, and I think having a value system that aligns with you is important. So if you're a Democrat and you have the values that are common in Democrats, I think it's important to know that those types of values would be seen in the building that we do, in preserving land is one of the main differences that I see. Is developing land is less of a priority, I believe, to more Democrats than preserving the environment. So there's a difference in the balance. So it isn't just about paving roads and how it gets done. There's definitely a perspective part of it that is very important.
There's other things too that I think the environment's a really big one, and the value on that. This summer, with the Black Lives Matter protests and that kind of thing, we had very real discussions about the need for racism and sensitivity training, not just among our staff, but among our supervisors, and obviously with our police. And we had productive conversations with our chief of police about how to address that and how Doylestown's doing in that. And those are values that we have more of a focus on, and we want to make sure we are doing right by all of our citizens, regardless of race, nationality, gender identity. Which leads me to another good point that Jen's been fighting for, and I've joined her on, is looking to pass things like LGBTQ anti-discrimination ordinances, which is not universal in Pennsylvania. And the desire to do that in Doylestown, if we had a majority board, that's something we could get done. And there's just certain things that, even if they're not national priorities, on a local level, Jen and I really wanted to push for meetings that were at times all people could attend. And that's not necessarily a Republican or Democrat issue. In our case, it happened to break down on those lines. But there's also other little subtle things, like when we're discussing budget and health care for our employees and how much we're willing to provide for our employees on that, there are some ideological divides on what is appropriate to take care of our employees. So that's stuff that factors into it from a democratic, and it is a partisan thing at times, like, because you do care. If you care about health care for people, then you want to make sure your employees are at least getting the health care. Obviously, we can't do Medicare for all Doylestown, but we can at least make sure the people who work for us, and really, especially like our public works crews and all that they have what they need as far as benefits go for us.
Yeah, I think it's very illustrative to see how impactful local government is through talking to both you guys here today and with the borough as well, just to see how municipal government can really impact people's lives. But I want to ask you guys a personal question, I guess, and say, what made you decide to run? Like, why do you care to run for a township supervisor? You know, why is it that position that you wanted to run for?
So before I was a township supervisor, I did a lot of work with nonprofit organizations, and I really felt like giving back to the community was important to me. I'm an accountant. I preferred clients that were nonprofit and government because I did feel like it gave me some sort of a purpose besides just doing tax returns. So it was always kind of a passion of mine to do that. And to be honest, I didn't think about township supervisor as something that I wanted to achieve necessarily. I had somebody approach me and ask me. And at that point, it perfectly aligned with the fact that I wanted to give back to the community, and I could give back to the community. I had the time and the availability to do it. And so that it ended up being a perfect kind of perfect position for me to be able to make some changes. And at the time, there were no Democrats on the Board of Supervisors, and I felt like it was very important to have the representation on the board as far as what my values were and what the values of a large chunk of the township, the people of the township had.
I hate to bring it back to he who shall not be named, but around the time of the 2016 election, I was an independent at the time, and I think like most people, I thought like, oh, if I was in politics, this is what I would do to fix it. But I hate both parties, and I don't want to get involved, kind of thing. After that election, I decided, okay, it's time to step up, stop just complaining on Facebook, and really get involved. I was looking at ways to get involved, and even prior to the election, I wanted to get more involved in my community. I was looking at ways to do that. And I started seeing things like get involved in your local community, get involved in your local governments. And so in my scenario, I'm like, okay, well, township supervisor sounds interesting. I think I could do that. And I was looking at the election times. I'm like, okay, well, I got like a year to decide because the term started 2018. Not thinking that you actually run in 2017. And I had somebody in the Doylestown Democrats come up to me and ask, like, hey, I heard you have an interest in running. I'm like, yeah, I've been thinking about it. They're like, cool. Well, petitions start next month, so are you interested in running? So that was kind of the jumping in and just going with it. And I will say it was a bit overwhelming at first, but luckily between Jen and I running, like we have a much better system in place of what it takes to run in Doylestown Township. We do have a numbers disadvantage if you're talking on purely partisan lines, but it is possible if you put in the work, going door to door, talking with voters, you can overcome that. Jen did that, I did it. We've come painfully close in other situations as well. So it can be done. And a lot of the desire was really just to have a voice that I felt like represented more people in Doylestown. I grew up in Doylestown, in the Pebble Ridge, Woodridge area, where they were putting the sewer project in. And this is something that had been in discussion for 20 years, since we moved to the house when I was in like third grade. And those people there always talked about they never felt like they had a voice for that. So it was important to me to listen to them and kind of talking them through. Now, that project was eventually voted before either one of us was on the board. But the idea that we still can help oversee that and make sure things stay on budget and try to find ways to reduce the cost of projects like that and really listen to the people, that was something that they felt like they weren't getting in that community. And there are pockets like that throughout Doylestown that people kind of even forget are part of Doylestown Township sometimes, that it's important for us to talk to and listen to them and really make their voices heard in the board.
Yeah, and so obviously this whole series is about the importance of voting locally and getting involved locally. Could you guys tell us a little bit about maybe 2017 and 2019, the margins of those elections?
Do you remember your win number in 2017?
I don't. I always said I'd get a tattoo of it somewhere.
I have that plan too.
But it was really interesting. We'll go after this. I was fortunate that I had a lot of support in the township and I had a larger margin to win. However, the 3 other supervisors were incredibly tight. I mean, it was a matter of double digits. I think it was single digits even.
2017, the year Jen and I ran, I lost by 83 votes. I think Jen, you won by like 150 or 200, something like that.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. There's reasons for that.
It is interesting, though. It is interesting when you look at that the way that's happened, because in
2019 I won by 200 votes, and Connor, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, it was 38 votes. So that we have that difference, and a lot of that wasn't Connor's fault or even my fault in 2017. There is like the way the ballot's constructed, the top ballot position gets more votes than the second ballot position. 2017, Jen was the top, I was the bottom. In 2019, I was the top, Connor was the bottom. Not to say Jen's not better than me, she is. But, there are reasons why that plays out like that. But at the same time, we've had record turnout in both of those years. More votes than any Democrat's ever gotten. And to what Jen alluded to, what the other seat that in 2019 was decided between the 2 Republicans by 10 votes. So like razor thin margins, and we're not out there saying the election was stolen when there's so much slimmer margins for that.
Like I said in the preamble to that question, is these margins are razor thin. And so that's why it's really important to get involved locally and vote locally in these off-year elections. But voting's just one piece of that. I guess this is my last question for you guys. If people want to get involved more locally in Doylestown Township, whether that be for the government or for anything else, what do you suggest they do?
Well, as far as the government goes, as Dan said earlier, go to doylestownpa.org and you can see vacancies on many of our commissions and committees, and you can volunteer some time on them. Some of them are pretty time intensive, some of them are not at all very time intensive. So you can involve yourself that way. But politically, I think one of the most important things isn't just turnout. Turnout's very, very important, going to the polls and actually voting, but the education part is incredibly important. So you know who you're voting for, because it's not always clear when you get into that voting booth or write or fill out that paper exactly the positions of these people. And it gets incredibly hard when it's a local election, because we don't have the budgets to put out big ads and run commercials and things of that nature. So one of the important things is to watch a series like this and get to know your elected officials. Come talk to your local officials. We're all available to you. And just ask the questions and come to the local Democratic meetings and participate, or even just listen in, because there's a lot of information that goes on there. So that's my advice.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off Jen, committees are a great way to get involved. We have an election this year, 2021. And one of those seats is supervisor. And if you're interested in running for that, Jen and I are obviously here to help with that. Having been through this a couple times. But even like outside of committees, there are little things you can do to start getting involved in Doylestown Township. A great example is our Environmental Advisory Council we have a native plant garden in Central Park. And starting in March, once it starts to warm up, we ask for volunteers to come out and help with that. And that's just a little thing you can do to come help out our community. We do things like that for Kids Castle, for Central Park, and little things like that really do make a difference. It can't be overstated enough how important volunteers are to what we do in Doylestown Township. I know as supervisors and elected officials, we like to get a big head on our shoulders and be like, oh, this is my town, I'm running it. But we would not be able to do it without the help of dedicated individuals that volunteer their time on things like our budget committee or our pension committee and help us to understand the nuances of what goes into this stuff to give us the information we need to make the best decisions for the township.
Well, thank you guys both for joining me. I want to thank you guys for watching. If you guys are interested in our other Vote Local interview series interviews, you can check them out here on YouTube, or you can join us for our live events through Zoom by checking out the website in the description box below, doylestown.democrats.com. You can sign up for our live events there, and you can join us for the live events. If you are enjoying these series, please feel free to give us a donation, as these are very intensive when we try to spend money and hire people and put in a lot of production value into bringing these people together and getting this information to you. So we really appreciate that if you possibly could. So one more time, I'd like to thank Jen Herring and Dan Wood, our Democratic Township Supervisors, for joining us. And I would like to thank Koru Real Wellness for hosting us today. Thank you again.
Okay, and welcome back. Thank you, Jen and Dan. Thanks for doing the recorded session and then being here again with us with this live session for questions and answers. We are getting a lot of questions in the Q&A, so if we don't get to everybody's questions, I think as you heard in the interview, Jen and Dan are available and they're interested in what you need with your specific questions for your specific property. And that would be a great question for you to get with them on or offline. So in the interest of fitting in as many questions as possible, we will ask if you could keep your questions to your answers to less than 2 minutes. Johnny King Marino, will you start us off with the first question, please?
Thank you, Judy. Jen and Dan, thank you very much for being with us again tonight. Let's talk a little bit about COVID-19. The pandemic is on everyone's mind, and it has had quite an impact on our families and our businesses and our budgets. Can you share with us what, if any, portion of the impact that the township has on the COVID-19 response?
I guess I'll start with that. So COVID-19 obviously has impacted everybody in probably the entire world. And obviously that's impacted the way the township runs. We've modified our business structure similar to a lot of the businesses in this COVID pandemic, where we do things a lot of remote meetings. We've also had our staff rotate, things like that. So we keep the actual township business as safe as possible. Our parks programs have been modified to be more pandemic friendly. We have fewer large gatherings. There was no fireworks this year, unfortunately. There's we had one movie instead of having the large get-togethers that we normally do, sadly. We've shut down the park at times, especially at the early days of the pandemic when we didn't really understand a lot of what's going on. Dan, if you want to speak on some other parts.
Yeah, we've well, first I want to thank everyone who's attending tonight and happy to be doing this without a mask on, watching myself not. I was smiling at times. I promise you that. But to the question at hand about COVID-19 and the township, some of the things we've done as a board of supervisors, for example, we have a septic management system that requires residents every 3 years to get their septic system tested. As part of that, usually we go to the county because they offer the best rates for it. However, the county's backed up, so we voted to delay having testing on it, and we're talking about possibly extending that depending on how these backflows go. When we discussed our budget this year, we discussed the possibility of a tax increase and how much that should be. And one of the things Jen and I fought for in those discussions, and our other supervisors agreed with us, is that in this current economic climate due to COVID-19, with people unemployed, that we need to try to minimize any tax increases just to cover our operations and not to prep the future. And we'll see how things are next year to try and reduce the impact on residents in situations like that.
Yeah, so that's a great segue. We did want to talk about the budget a little bit. We have a slide. Jen, we're going to ask for your expertise here, starting with the revenue. Do we have that slide ready? So I know that we have the 1% local tax that my employer takes out of my payroll, and I do get my real estate tax bill. Can you give us some more details about the revenue and how it all fits together?
Sure. So that you can see the earned income tax, that's that 1% that you're referring to. That is the largest share of our budget as far as our revenue source comes in. As it relates to COVID, we'll see it. You've seen a lot of municipalities and just government in general not receiving the type of revenue that they once did because people have lost their jobs. Therefore, there's not that tax revenue that came in. Fortunately, we live in an area that's fairly stable when it comes to that. So it had a minimal impact on our budget. So we were able to continue the programs that everybody relies on and loves that Doylestown Township can bring them. Real estate taxes. This is a topic that I really like to talk about because I think a lot of people have a misconception that real estate taxes are huge for the township. They aren't. They're a quarter of our revenue, which is a significant amount. But when you look at your tax bill, you're not looking for the most part at township taxes. The school taxes are about 100 times higher than township taxes. The county is also quite high. The taxes that you pay on your tax bill represent maybe 8%. The township share is about 8% of that bill that you get from Sam Kolodny, our local tax collector. So I think that that's an interesting misconception that we hear a lot about. And all of these things are very important because they are the things that help fund the expenses that create the township that we live in and make it a comfortable place to live in. Grants and
I have a question. So are you saying that the 1% is also divided between the county, or does it go fully to the township?
The 1% is 100% to the township. The real estate taxes are the ones that get separated between county, school district, which is the largest share, and the municipality.
Thank you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anything else on there that, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. The permits, the building permits are income for us. Capital financing grants, is that just income off of money that's saved by the township?
So it's interesting. So there are grants in there, which, everybody's aware of grants. You can get them from the state, federal government. You can even get them from some private businesses. But the capital financing, if you're looking at it as an accountant, it's really just cash flow. So it's us borrowing money. In this instance, from this, in this slide, I believe this is the cash flow from borrowing money for our, maybe our water sewer project, which is, maybe this is for 2021. So we're looking at our community center, which is also something that we're looking to borrow against.
Right. Okay, so let's move to the where all the money goes. We talk about that. We have a slide for that.
All right, so this is an interesting pie chart, at least in my eyes. So capital, again, you'll see that's the large purple pie piece. That is all of our projects, so the big projects that we're spending money on. That would be our building. It would be any large. Actually, our building project is in a separate section, but yeah, larger projects like that, bridges and roads and things like that. The police is actually, this pie chart kind of misrepresents it a little bit, because the police, although it shows 15% of our budget, you have to realize that fringe benefits, which are the pension and that type of thing, are also split between the police budget and our other operating budget. So that fringe benefits is a big chunk, and our police force is a big expenditure for the township.
Right. Okay. So the pensions are in there. Pensions for county employees outside of police, or just for police?
So it's for the township. It's for both. We have two different pension plans. We have a police one and a non-uniform pension plan, which I've been able to work extensively on. One of the issues that has happened to a lot of municipalities is their pensions are underfunded. So basically, it means you have less money in the bank to pay out your retirees than what you would need if everybody were to retire right now. So this underfunding has happened quite a bit all over the country, and we're in a decent position, but we're not in a perfect position. So we've been working very hard to get ourselves back to where we need to be.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Well, just a quick overview. So John, do you have the next question for us?
Yeah, we have a question that came in via email. Thank you, Mel Scott. In light of the recent news that Philadelphia has become a designated non-toxic community, that means that there is no pesticides or any other types of toxic material used. They're going to use organic substitutes. Environmental groups obviously say the pesticides are dangerous and cause cancer for our kids, our pets, and ourselves. What is the chance that Doylestown Township will follow in suit?
Yeah, I'll take the lead on that one. This is actually something we've been talking about in our Environmental Advisory Council committee. It's come up a few times, and we've been discussing the use of pesticides specific to township property right now. And they've been offering us guidance on best practices when it comes to maintaining our property, our fields, what to spray for. I mean, we have kids out there playing soccer and that kind of thing. We want to make sure we're not spraying something that's going to impact them as they're sitting in the grass watching their older siblings play or something like that. So it is something we are actively discussing. As far as making the entire township a non-toxic community, making sure I got that term right. We haven't gotten to that point of the discussions. We have started having discussions recently about what kind of ordinances could we put in place for like HOAs and that kind of thing, or education outreach, so that they know what they should be using on their properties. This is still in the early phases. I would be happy to talk more with people about this, especially our Environmental Advisory Council, as I mentioned, has a really big interest in pesticides, and we're continuing to gather more information. And I would expect this year for that to really start picking up discussions on how to approach that.
No, that's great. Yes. Thank you. That's a great answer. Back to the budget and the police budget, talking about the police a little bit. It's interesting to know that the Doylestown Township has their own police, and then the Doylestown Borough is separate from that. So they're not actually the same police unit. It's sometimes hard for people to realize that. So Doylestown Borough shares police with Chalfont and New Britain. So in terms of the police department and the township supervisors oversee that, we saw what's gone on. Bucks County has funded a pilot program in Bensalem to provide, to employ social workers as part of the police department, because we know that so many times police are called to respond to mental health crises. Is this something that might be considered with the township?
Well, I think that that's a tough question. Right now, what our police department is doing is it's working with Nova, which is they help people work through the justice system and get assistance. The victims get assistance. But we don't have any plans at this point to have any counselors on staff. Our police department has been pretty much the same type of environment for a very long time. And so in order to make a change like that, I think there would have to be some major change in leadership.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
For what our sorry, our police force is keeping an eye on the Bensalem program to see how it progresses. And so kudos to Bensalem for taking the lead on that, and hopefully showing an example for the rest of us. And hopefully it works out and they have a blueprint we can follow very soon.
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting model that's being looked at. It's being looked at across the country, and it's nice to think that Doylestown Township would be, show the leadership, whether it's with these kind of ideas that are coming out that might be beneficial to all people, and people of diversity too would benefit as well. So in reference to the, just on the police one more, just talking about the police one more time, I'm in security, so it's just an interesting topic that is of concern of mine. There was a recent shooting of a neighbor in a neighborhood. He was wielding a gun, and he was killed by the township police. Obviously, it's a serious situation. What kind of oversight or review? Is there an external or internal review to make sure that best policies and practices were adhered to in those kind of circumstances?
So whenever there's an officer related shooting, whenever one of the officers is part of a shooting, especially when it ends in the death of another person, there's a review that happens at the county level by county detectives. And so in that instance, that's exactly what happened. It went to review with the county detectives. And then after that review happens, the investigation happens, it's reviewed by our DA. So that's Matt Weintraub. So that's the normal flow of things for that.
Right. So that's excellent. It's nice to hear that they do get reviewed. So thank you for that. John?
When you say change in leadership to get something that done, what portion of leadership are you speaking about?
Well, I think when it comes to something like that, this is a big cultural shift in the U.S. This is a fairly new issue that's come up. I think it has a lot of merit, and we should definitely be looking into it. But that isn't the position at this point of the township to have that type of service. Our township, the position of the township is that we do rely on other organizations like Nova, like the Lenape Valley Foundation, to assist with our police officers. And we also have contracts with other local police offices like Central Bucks Police Department, where we utilize each other's equipment, personnel, things like that. So it is possible we can utilize that in partnership.
That's great. So last question, because our hour is almost ticking by. And Jen and Dan, a lot of the priorities that you had realized coming into the office, having more accessibility, more after hours meetings, you realized that. Kudos, check the box. Now you want to, and the environmental policies, the Sierra Club 100, that's really exciting. Total renewable by 2050, that's exciting. So what's the priorities next?
One of the things we're still discussing, we talked about in that video, when Jen and I ran in 2017 and when Connor and I ran in 2019, one of the things we wanted to push was an LGBTQ protection ordinance for the township, similar to what the borough has. and some other municipalities. So that's something we'd still like to push. And I believe it was alluded to in some of our comments that with Doylestown, a lot of it is built out at this point. There's not much more to go, and I don't think I want to see too much more built in what's available. So it requires a shift in thinking for us, for the township, to how do we maintain the infrastructure we build up, and how do we address what still needs improvement. Part of the reason for a tax increase that you'll be receiving this year is to bring our roads programs to a proper level of funding where we can actually keep up with the roads. Prior to this year, that was not the case. So we were actually having our roads degrade faster than we replaced them. So we're excited to move in on that. And when we talk about infrastructure as well, that includes things like water projects and sewer projects across the township. Obviously, Pell Ridge, Woodridge is underway right now. Real quick to answer one of the questions, the current estimate I have for that, and this is Bucks County Water and Sewer pushing that, is sometime early 2021 it should be finished, heading into the spring. There's a various amount of issues, but I'm not going to go into them here. I'm more than happy to talk with you after this meeting about that. But not just that section, but there are other parts of the township where septic systems are starting to fail. We're getting to that point where septics only last like 40, 50 years, and we have to start addressing those concerns and what the infrastructure looks like going forward. And those aren't easy questions by any stretch, because it's an expensive endeavor, and we have to do better for our residents than what's been done in the past on that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. A lot of the questions in the Q&A were about roads. So I know that you'll be getting back to, we'll be following up with the questions that we were not able to get to. And that concludes the questions. We're going to close this out for this evening. Thanks again for being here. To the slide, please. Hopefully you've learned more about the county, the township, and the township leaders. Thank you so much for giving us this time, and how you can get more involved. There's plenty of committees that you can join and be a part of. You can also join and come to a Democratic meeting, a Doylestown Democratic meeting, or whatever municipality you can that you're involved with. You can go to a meeting. There's meetings on the Bucks County website, Democratic website. There's a calendar of events for all the different meetings across the county. And the most important thing you can do too is to vote. There is a upcoming primary election, May 18th, where we will be picking judges and DAs and other local elected officials. And then that nominated Democrat will run against the Republican in the general election on November 2nd. If you come to one of the Doylestown Democratic meetings, you can actually meet a lot of the candidates running for office. So it's a great way to get involved. Next slide, yes. And special thanks again to tonight's guest, Jennifer Herring and Dan Wood, taking our questions. Thanks so much to the Doylestown Democrats for sponsoring this event, and to all of you who have donated. We very much appreciate that. And a big shout out to our production and promotions team, Bonnie Chang, Jeff Cogskull, Kevin Green, Connor O'Hanlon, Jenny Robinson, Noni West, and Carl Herring. And a special shout to Johnny King Marino for filling in for us tonight for Bonnie Chang. And lastly, the next interview is in 2 weeks. It is Wednesday, February 17th. You can sign up starting tomorrow for that. That's a very fun interview, very good interview that you'd like to see. So do sign up through the DoylestownDemocrats.com website, where you can also find us, our Facebook link, YouTube link, and Twitter link. I've been asked to make sure that we tell you to subscribe, please, to our YouTube channel. We very much appreciate the subscription. And so to everyone, thank you for joining us this evening, and have a good evening. Bye-bye.